The Goat House is back, and as requested, we have the notable prospects here that could slide a little bit on draft day, which teams could possibly pick them up. Our most recent video, we talked about the guys that can go earlier than expected, so this is kind of the opposite here. Excited to break it down. Starting with Arizona receiver Tetairoa McMillan, seems to be a fan favorite, even though everyone loves him, everyone knows he's a big-time receiver prospect, but people starting to realize, like, hey, he might not go nearly as early as we thought, or we've been mocking him. Just because how often do teams take this style of receiver, big body, contested catch guy, even though I do think it could be a lot more than that, but doesn't have elite separation skills, doesn't have elite speed. How early do teams take these guys? Not that early, typically, even though he could go in the first round, obviously, still. But Patriots, you don't see mocked a ton, from analysts or experts. It seems to be, social media, people talking, fans talking like, hey, the Patriots got to take this guy at 4, right? Like, if I were them, I would take him. Seems to be more, the Patriots are discussed more in that regard. You see the Raiders and the Panthers. The Panthers are a big one, common in mocks, but starting to slide down a little bit. I think it's realistic that he can go maybe towards the middle or back end even of the first round. Teams looking for, another receiver. The Broncos, it sounds like they might go running back into first, but I do think McMillan, I've compared him to Michael Thomas. I haven't really heard that comparison anywhere else. I think that's how he could be used. He's actually dominant in slants going across the middle of the field, a big body guy that can actually use in the slot. To me, that's how I think he should be used. Not always there. Obviously use him on the boundary, but I think it'd be great for Sean Payton's offense. The Chargers, pair him with Ladd McConkey. Justin Herbert would be fantastic. And the Packers, even though they don't take receivers in the first round, if he slipped to there, I think the Packers would be all over that. So a big name, top-tier prospect in many people's eyes that could slide a little bit on draft day, which could result in a team getting a steal. Mason Graham, an elite prospect in some people's eyes. I'm not going to sit here and say he's for sure falling. He's going to slide. He very well could go where he's commonly mocked to the Jaguars at pick 5 or around that range. You see the Raiders, the Jets, but this is a guy that I think could slide a tiny bit, and I'm not counting on that for sure, but I would not be surprised if it happened while the whole world, like, imagine if the Bears or the Niners get him, the whole world's going to be like, how is that even possible? I think there is a shot, and that's because I don't think Graham's going to be for everyone. That's one, mainly because, the measurables, where's his weight at? He gained some weight, going into his pro day, obviously. He's a little on the stubby side, some people will say. And I do think there will be teams, not a ton of teams, but there will be teams out there that just prefer Walter Nolan. His upside has a little bit better of the, in the size, is a little bit better in the prototypical size category. He's super explosive off the ball, but Graham is a unique prospect, and man, he is flashy. And when he wins, it's like no other. But a flaw on Graham is he is spending a lot of time working east and west, right? Laterally, side to side, sideline to sideline, and sometimes he gets around, so quickly. Quickness really stands out, gets around offensive linemen that way, and that's where he wins his reps. And then the consistent same production, the lack of production over the years. So some teams might go, I think we rather have Walter Nolan. Maybe we don't want the Graham type. Maybe we want his teammate, Grant. Maybe we want Kenneth Grant, like his more of the nose tackle type. So could he slide a little bit for those reasons? And you start talking about what if Cam Ward goes 1, which I think he is. What if Sanders goes 2 or 3, which he will, one of those two. It's going to start pushing players back. Teams could reach on linemen up there. So it could push players like this back. So still, most likely, Jags, Raiders, Jets. But I would not be shocked, while a lot of the world would be shocked, if he fell in the Bears' lap at pick 10. And I think they would grab him. Maybe they let him slide and the 49ers right after him grab him. That's possible. They're all putting the Cowboys up here too, but I don't think he gets by both those teams. That would be a little shocking. I think if somehow he got by the Bears, if he was there for the Niners, I think they would definitely take him, put him on the, pair him with Nick Bosa inside of him. It'd just be a really solid defensive line. Then, the Niners are going to get back on track where their defensive line was then. So interesting one here. See where he goes. I want to see where Walter Nolan goes. Nolan is a legit prospect that I think teams will be split on, but I could see teams having him ahead of Graham, actually. Another top-tier prospect, this one, Georgia's pass rusher / linebacker, Jalen Walker. More reps off ball as a linebacker, but some damn good reps off the edge. And a lot of people's one of their top prospects on their board. mocking him pretty early. So you're starting to see the Raiders a little bit. Panthers, Niners, those teams pretty common. Falcons aren't, they're somewhat common as well. But because he's a little bit of a tweener, or is he that great in an off-ball line as an off-ball linebacker? I think he's much better as an edge rusher, but he doesn't really have the measurements to play there according to some teams. Some teams will not care. So for those reasons, where do you put him? Do you have to use him at both? And, he's not going to fit 4-3 defensive end, but is he going to be an inside linebacker in a 3-4 if he's playing off ball? So again, teams are going through this. Is he going to fit us? He's not going to be for everyone. So that could result in him dropping a little bit. So we could actually see him falling in the lap of teams like the Falcons, the Cardinals. Even though the Cardinals added Josh Sweat, I think Gannon would love to have his hands on Jalen Walker here. The Bengals definitely could be a possibility, even if they do bring back Trey Hendrickson. But you could start listing teams like the Seahawks, the Bucks. Totally could see those, teams as you're starting to push the 20s spot of the first round. You could totally see that, even though it's a little much later than where he's been mocked, but where he is on people's boards as well, just because, again, what is he to every team? Lacking some length, a little bit of a tweener, so an interesting prospect to watch on day one. Max Harrison, the fastest player at the Combine, so the fastest player in the draft, the corner from Kentucky. It's funny because we were talking about him after the Senior Bowl, after the Combine, as a big winner, a big riser, a second-round guy going in the first, but now, again, things are kind of dying down a little bit. There's some talk about his character, maybe an off-the-field issue. I'm not an expert in off-the-field stuff, but there is some chatter out there that could be a problem. And you just look at some of these other corners on tape, and I do think they're a little bit better, even though he has elite speed. But obviously, guys like Barron, guys like Johnson, I think Amos, I think these guys got to go before him, and maybe you could talk about some other guys as well. So pretty common after the Combine, after he was a riser, to see him go to teams like the Vikings, the Rams, the Bills in the first. But I'm kind of going back to where he started, maybe early second, teams like, and you could throw several teams in here. I narrowed it down to 3, but teams like the Giants, the Jags, Dolphins, teams that I think will really like his speed, like his upside, and feel that he is too good to pass on in early too. Maybe that's starting to be more realistic again, where he was mocked, for Max Harrison. Tyler Booker, the guard from Alabama, a very interesting one because most of the mocks I think are completely wrong with him. So many mocks with him going to specifically the Dolphins or the Seahawks, and I just do not see him as a fit. Even if he was good enough, which he very well could be talent-wise, I just do not see them viewing him as a fit. This guy, obviously isn't the quickest, isn't the most athletic. He's not going to pull. He's not going to get outside. You're not going to see him get downfield and hit blocks in an outside zone scheme. It's just not going to happen, and that's what those teams are trying. Teams like the Dolphins, the Seahawks are trying to run. So I do not see those teams grabbing him. I think the most people that make mocks just go, all right, this team needs that position, boom, we'll put him there. And that's really not how it works, and that's where the people make big mistakes. But maybe those teams, maybe it's somewhat possible. Maybe they view like, hey, we have guys that are quick enough, and let's get a kind of a big physical back to help us, in different scenarios. So you can't say 0% chance, but I think people kind of got Booker all wrong, and that is why he could fall a little bit, because he's only going to fit, at least in my opinion, but I think a lot of people's opinion, only going to fit specific schemes, really needs a gap scheme. A lot of north and south blocking, just drive the man in front of you, out-bully him, right? Not a lot of getting out in space, getting downfield, be quicker, than the ball carrier, before the ball carrier, has developed the run outside. None of that, right? So a great fit would be the Baltimore Ravens. Could he slide there just because the lack of fits earlier? And the Commanders would like him as well. Could he drop in the Chiefs' lap, and replace Joe Thuney? Obviously, Thuney was a lot quicker, but I definitely think the Chiefs in that system, they would make him work. So it's an interesting one because he's very much talented enough to go much earlier in the bottom of the first round, but there's just teams that wouldn't draft him. This is a great example of when people say teams have 14, 15 first-round grades, and it's lower than the amount like I have, and that's because some teams scratch guys like this off the board. He's a first-round talent, but some teams are like, this guy's not going to work in our scheme. We're not going to take him, so he's not even on their board. So it's a great example here, and there's players like that at almost every single position. So because he's not for everyone, because he's not super athletically gifted, even though he's talented, he could drop a little bit to more of the proper fit. But the Colts are a team a little earlier. And, they're starting to get mocked with Booker a little bit because they lost Will Fries, and he would fit the Shane Steichen offense for sure. So that could be an interesting one. But it is pretty common to see a tight end mock to the Colts as well. So we'll see what happens. Florida State corner Azareye'h Thomas, a standout in man coverage, specifically press man. That is where he is best. And he's so good at it that he looks like clearly a first-round talent when you watch him on tape. But there are some questions. Number one, most of the NFL is zone coverage right now. Zone teams thrive. Teams are running more and more zone every single year. So it's not that he can't do it. He might be viewed as a little bit more of a risk because of that. And his speed is a little lacking. That was kind of the only question besides the zone thing with teams. And he goes to his pro day, and some people clocked him even around 4.60. Most people are just under that in the 4.5s. And that matters at that position, especially if he's a man coverage corner. You want to be able to run 4.4. So he's so good on tape and man, but is he going to be as good in zone or anywhere near as good in zone? And does he have the speed? So he was commonly mocked early second to a wide variety of teams. It wasn't specific teams, but sometimes you would see late first because again, on tape, playing his game, his coverage, he looks really, really good. But I do think he can drop a little bit. We can see him drop. He's not going to be for everyone. The teams that run the least amount of man, they're going to be like, no, not for us. And teams that really, really, really value speed at the corner position, they're not going to be for them either. So I could see the Ravens, who mix up their coverages, their corners have to be able to show man at least, be able to press. They could, if he drops to them late too. The Commanders, Dan Quinn likes run a lot of man coverage as well. And I could even see him getting in the early round 3 just because, again, he's going to need specific fits. And usually the players that are really good but need specific scheme fits, those teams that he fits, they know, hey, we can wait on him because this team, that team, all these teams aren't going to be taking him before us. So he could actually slip to early round 3. A team like the Jets would be a great fit. They bring in Aaron Glenn, Steve Wilks, a lot of man coverage, coming with the Jets going forward there. So that'd be a really solid fit. So could this guy, even though he's super talented, go late 2, early 3? I totally could see it with Azareye'h Thomas. Jack Sawyer, pass rusher from Ohio State. Obviously a big notable name. Went off in the playoffs, maybe minus the national championship game. So I think people talk about him as this big name guy that's got to go second round, right? Maybe even late first. I'd be shocked with all that. Of course, it could happen in the middle of the second round, but I'm expecting him to fall a little bit more. I think the league is going to view him just, me banking on the league viewing him a little bit lower than how fans is, just based on what I've watched on tape. But also, he goes into the combine and surprisingly really severely lacking length. He just plays very, very tight off the edge and when trying to close it on the quarterback. And I thought when he played the better tackles, I thought they handled him pretty well. So I even could see him dropping as far as late round 3. I think that's pretty realistic. I'm not saying that's for sure going to happen. It's going to take a team to kind of fall in love with him, what he did recently and the idea of him and, him coming from that big time program, and they could take him in the second round. Definitely possible. But late 3, there are some fits. I could totally see him going around that range. Teams like the Packers, Browns, Lions, I think they would take a shot on him there. I wouldn't even be against him early 4, even though I do think he goes earlier in that. So a notable name to kind of watch to slip a little bit. Another Ohio State Buckeye, Will Howard. It sounds like he could be sliding a little bit. It's just not just really my opinion here. That's just kind of the word right now. As throughout the playoffs, national championship, he's rising up because he's playing better football. He's leading the best team in the country. He's getting the ball out on time, looking accurate. I mean, he looked like a second-round pick throughout that portion, that very important portion. Before that, which is the chunk of his tape, not so much. Kind of looked like a 4th at very best, fifth round pick. Maybe that's at best. So he's a little trickier. Went in the combine, didn't throw too well. Other quarterbacks are looking good. They're rising up. So I think he's discussed more as a 3rd round pick, but I would not be surprised if he dropped a little further than that, even as far as early round 5, where he can find some teams that if they don't have a quarterback drafted by that point, they could grab one. Chip Kelly and the Raiders, he's the offense coordinator there now. The Jets I could see as a fit. The Steelers might need a quarterback around that range whether they add Aaron Rodgers or not. If they don't, they probably need one earlier, actually. So he's a guy that he was kind of a riser as we got through the college football playoff, and now he's a little bit of a faller, since the combine. Deion Walker, Kentucky defensive tackle, massive body. I think that's why people hype him up a little bit. Like, freakishly large dude, could obviously move, interior offensive lineman with just pure, just raw power. Obviously very solid stopping to run. I mean, he's severely lacking athleticism, and sometimes you got to kind of give a pass to these guys because they're so big. But if you watch him on tape, he just purely does rely on his size and power. So I think people kind of overhyped him a little bit, even though he's a unique player that will get drafted at some point and could work out for a team. But since he's severely lacking athleticism, he's only going to be used in certain situations. Very tight player, tough for him to bend and get flexible, obviously at that size. And every year we get more and more of these massive. I mean, last year was Devondre Sweat. This year is Kenneth Grant. A couple years ago, Jordan Davis. These massive guys that are just, they're moving. They're actually flexible. So Walker is not those guys, obviously. So kind of talked about as a third-round guy. I definitely could see him around the fifth round. Teams looking for a nose tackle, big body, lengthy, that could stop the run. Teams that will value that are the teams that I listed as possible fits. But you could, with guys like this that might go anywhere from late day 2 to early day 3, you can start listing several teams. But those are the teams that kind of stood out to where, he could fall to a little bit further than where people think. And Xavier Restrepo, Miami slot receiver, very solid, great hands, good separator, even though he doesn't have that speed, but he's very quick, knows how to run routes. The footwork is very solid. But just the other day at the pro day, some people clocked him in the 4.8s. Some people clocked him in the 4.9s in his 40-yard dash. That is brutal. Absolutely brutal. Now, he can still play. Doesn't change that he can catch the ball. He's really solid in the slot. You need more quickness than speed there, but there's going to be teams that are like, we're going to wait. We like him, but we're going to wait because that speed's a little scary. Speed is a big thing in the NFL, obviously. So he was talked about as a late 3, early 4 guy. I definitely think he will slide. Some of these guys in this video are like, they maybe could slide. Some of these guys like him, I think they'll definitely slide. Late round 5 actually seems pretty realistic right now. Could see like a team like the Steelers. I think Arthur Smith would value him. The Titans, I expect them to take Cam Ward, so could they pair them together? The argument against that, I think they'll convey speed, looking at, they bring in Mike Borgonzi from the Chiefs. That's what the Chiefs' process was with the receiver position. We're just going for flat-out speed, so could argue against that one, but it'd be fun to see him and Cam Ward back together. I could totally see the Cowboys late round 5, but another one of those, once you start getting to early day 3, you could start listing a lot of teams here. For prospects like this. But that'll wrap it up for this one. Some notable big-name prospects all over the draft that could possibly fall. Some of them I think will fall. Again, some of them possible. Just to kind of give you an idea, let's be less surprised on draft day. Where could they land if they slipped a little bit in the draft? So enjoy doing these videos quite a bit here. We've done a couple of them recently, more to come as we approach the draft, more mock drafts, a lot planned, want to do. We're going to have a live stream on draft day. Would like to do, at least one, but a couple maybe before we get to that actual draft day live stream. But that'll wrap it up for this one. Like, subscribe, to notifications on. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.